Tov, today's daf yomi is Sanhedrin Pei Dalet, Sanhedrin 84. Today's daf is dedicated for Shmir from the Chayalim. That's all for the Shvuyim and Yeshua for Am Yisrael and the Seitzah Sarah. We're going to start in the bottom two lines of 83b. The Gemara says of Orel, One, Yoshev, Hazar, that if a person serves in the temple while he's uncircumcised, Rashi says even if his brothers died as a result of circumcision, he's still not allowed to serve in the temple, because even though he's exempt from circumcision, you need to be circumcised in order to serve. And an onain is somebody on the day of a relative Rahman's passing, and a yoshev, someone who serves while sitting in the temple ba'asara. They're all going to be prohibited via prohibition, Allah, but not death from heaven. What's the source? Until Ezekiel, the son of Buzi, came Vulim Danu and taught it to us. What's it based upon? It says in the pasuk of Yecheskel called Ben Nechar Arel Lev that any Kohen who is Ben Nechar Arel Lev, which is uncircumcised heart, Rashi says he worships idolatry. A Kohen who worships idolatry. Arel Basar, uncircumcised flesh, Lo Yavo Amitashi. You're not coming to my temple. So that's a prohibition. Onen minon, what's the source of an onen? Dirsev, umin hamikdash lo yitzei, v'lo yichalal as mikdash elohav. It says he did not leave my temple. The Kohen Gadol is not allowed to leave the temple on the day of a passing. If he leaves the temple, he'll be desecrating my as mikdash elohav. He'll be desecrating the temple of his God, which implies that somebody else who did not leave will for sure desecrate. So we see that an onain who serves is desecrating. It's a prohibition. But why do we say it's just a prohibition? Why do we compare it to truma, where the word chil appears? And just like by truma, if you eat the truma while you're tamei, you get death from heaven. Also here, by the onain who serves, you should get death. Gemara says no, because by the Kohen who serves in a state of onain, it doesn't actually say, it's all an inference. It doesn't say chilal by him directly. It's only learned from an inference from the Kohen Gadol. So have a davar abamin aklal, but called davar abamin aklal, and don't know so much there is shava. So therefore, it's something that comes from the klal, from the general rule, and we have a principle that if something is inferred, we don't make a gzera shava. You don't make this word comparison. And how do we know that somebody who sits while serving in the temple is a prohibition? It says because he was selected to stand and to serve, which means the Kohen was selected for standing while serving, but not sitting. A Kohen has a physical defect. What's the halacha with respect to Kohen who serves while having a physical defect? Rabbi Omer B'Misa. Rabbi says death. Chachamim say he gets just a regular prohibition. My time of the Rabbi, what's the reasoning for Rabbi? Because it says ach ala parochas lo yavo. It says to the parochas he cannot come. V'yolav chil chil mitruma, and we compare it to truma. It says by the balmum chilel, and by truma it says chilel. Malo and b'misa kama misa. So it's death. But why don't we compare it to the nosar, expired meat, which is kares? V'nila chil chil minosar. Malo and b'koras kama kares. So the Gemara says no. Mistabra mitruma havalil me'av. It's more logical to compare the blemish going to truma shekain psula guf. They both have defects in the body. And so the Gemara says, no, no, it's more logical compared to Noser, Shekain Kodesh, both the Baal Mum and the expired meat are dealing with sacred food, unlike Truma, which is not Hekdesh. Pnim both deal with prohibitions on inside the base of Mikdash. Pigol both have to do with basically carbon, which has to deal with expired meat. Noser and also Noser applies. So therefore, the Gemara says, okay, it's a different source that a Baal Mum, according to Rebbe. What's the source? Balmum. So the Gemara says, Ella, we learn out from a Kohen who serves in a state of ritual impurity. Both of them are psul guf and psul guf. Both have the same disqualifications of the body. And also both of them have kodesh pnim pigol v'noser. Kodesh pnim pigol v'noser. And we know a Kohen serves in chayav misaf b'dei shamayim. If a Kohen serves in a state of ritual impurity, so also a balmum. Rabbanan, they'll say Amakra, Bo, says about the Balmum, it says about this pasuk, it says in the verse, Bo, and that word Bo is coming to exclude the Balmum. Bo, velo b'mi'ila, not with someone, Bo, excuse me, Bo, velo b'Balmum. And now the Gemara says the next line, he's a b'mi'ila, if the person intentionally misuses temple property, Rabbi Omer b'misa, v'chamim Omer b'azar. Rabbi says it's liable for death from heaven. Chachamim say it's a prohibition. My time of the Rabbi. Why does Rabbi say you get death from heaven? Amar Rabbi Avo, Gamar Chet Chet and Truma. It says the word Chet by both, so we compare it to the Truma. Mala Lamba Misa, just like someone who eats Truma in a state of Tuma gets death from heaven. Avkama Misa. Rabban Amri Amar Kra Bo V'lo b'Meila. Rabbi say it says Bo means Bo, but not with misappropriated temple property. Now we go back to the line in the Mishnah. It says the Zar Shashimesh B'Mikdash. If there's a non-Kohen who serves in the temple, what will be the halacha? It says the Zar Shashimesh B'Mikdash. Rabbi Akiva says in our Mishnah that he gets chenek, which is strangulation, and the Chachamim say he gets death from heaven. So Rabbi Akiva says strangulation. In our Mishnah, you'll see that the Bryce of the Gemara is going to cite as Rabbi Akiva has a different opinion, and the Chachamim say death from heaven. So Tanya Rabbi Shmuel Omer Nemakan Mazor Karev Yumas. It says here that the non-Kohen who comes to serve in the temple will be put to death. V'nemer La'alon, and it says by the plague that affected Bnei Yisrael after Korach, what's the words exactly? It says, Koha Karev HaKarev HaMishkan Hashem Yumas. Whoever comes too close will die. And this is they said we can't be careful about this because so somebody will come too close, so he'll die. So what do we learn? So just like by Korach, it was a plague, so it's from heaven. So also here, says Rabbi Shmuel, coming too close to the temple, it's death from heaven. Rabbi Akiva says, never can. Vazara Karev, you must. It says by serving in the temple, you'll die. It says by a prophet who tries to get people to follow idolatry, it says in the pasuk, "V'naviyahu cholema choloma hu yumas ki diber Sarah al Hashem elokechem hamotzi etchem eretz Mitzrayim." Because basically, he wanted to take you to go to follow after idolatry. So there we're going to say, it says by this prophet that he'll die. Just like this prophet wants to take you to idolatry, it's stoning. Avkamaskil, also by this Zar who comes too close, he'll get stoning. Rabbi Yochanan Nuri Omer Malalam B'chanek Avkan B'chanek. Rabbi Yochanan Nuri says just like there it's strangulation, also here by the non-Kohen who serves, it's strangulation. But okay, so Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva. What's the dispute between Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva? Rabbi Akiva suffered done in Yumas mi Yumas, and done in Yumas mi Yamus. The words are that Rabbi Shmuel connected were Yumas and Yamus. So they're not exactly the same words. Rabbi Akiva says we should compare the exact same words. Rabbi Shmuel suffered done in Hedjo mi Hedjo, and done in Hedjo mi Navi. He says you're taking the case of a Zar and comparing it to a prophet. They're not the same status. So Rabbi Akiva says no. No, since the prophet is bringing them to idolatry, he's not a prophet anymore. He's a hedjot. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yochanan Nuri. What's the dispute between Rabbi Akiva who says skila, Rabbi Yochanan Nuri says chanek? The put to Rabbi Shimon Rabbanan. It's a dispute between Rabbi Shimon and Rabbanan, which we had. The Tanya, we had this earlier in 67a, because it says Navi Sheidiach B'skila, a prophet that caused people to go astray. A prophet that caused people to go astray is going to get stoning. That is the position of the Rabbi Shimon. Navi Sheidiach B'skila. That's the position of the Rabbanan. Rabbi Shimon over B'chanek. So Rabbi Shimon gets strangulations. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri is following Rabbi Shimon. But didn't we learn in our Mishnah that Rabbi Akiva says that the Zar who serves gets strangulation? So the Gemara says straight Tanai, leave it to Rabbi Akiva. It's two Tanaim according to Rabbi Akiva. Mas Nisin, Rabbi Shimon, they'll leave it to Rabbi Akiva. So our Mishnah, which says strangulation, is Rabbi Shimon according to Rabbi Akiva, and the Brisa is the Rabbanan, I'll leave it to Rabbi Akiva. Whereas the Brisa, which says Rabbi Akiva says stoning, that's like the Rabbanan. Hadran alach ilan, it's rough, and we will return to you Elu Hain on Israfin. And now we come on to the next chapter, which is Elu Hain on Nachnakin. Well, actually, it's a little bit of a trick question. In the Mishnayos, it's not the next chapter. In the Mishnayos, this will be the last chapter. But in the Gemara, this is the last chapter. So these are, in the Gemara, this is the next chapter, which is, these are the strangulations. The last chapter is Parachelik, according to the Gemara. These are the ones who get strangulation. One who strikes his father and his mother, Rahmano Litzlan. The Gonim Nefesh Mi Yisrael, one who steals somebody from the Jewish people. Mizaki Mamre, one who is a rebellious elder. Alpi Bezdin, he rebels against the word of the court, the halach of the court. Minavi Sheker, a false prophet. Vamisnabe B'Shem Avodas Kochavim, one who prophesies in the name of idolatry. V'Abal Eshes Ish, one who's with a married woman. V'Zomame Bas Kohen, one who falsely testifies about the daughter of a Kohen. The daughter of a Kohen is a special verse that she gets. And they were going to make her get sreifa. They were going to get her get burnt. But we only give her with the death. We only give them with the death that they would have been liable if they engage in this adulterous relationship, which is chenek. And they, as the pasuk says, he tisaref v'lo bo Allah. It says she will be burned, but not the one who was with her. The one who was with her gets strangulation, and so therefore, since it says the zomim min kasher zamam lasos lachiv kasher zamam lasos lachav, so lachiv v'lo lachoso, like they tried to do to him and not to her. So therefore, we give them strangulation ubo Allah, and also the one who is with the daughter of the Bas Kohen gets strangulation and not burning. But the one who is with an Arusa, the one who's with her gets stoning. That's the Gemara. What's the source of the idea that one who strikes his father and his mother, Rahmano Litzlan, gets strangulation? So the Gemara says, because it says that we put to death, and that refers to strangulation. Miktal. So the Gemara says, well, maybe it means that you only get strangulation if you actually kill him. But if you just strike him, you're not going to get strangulation. So the Gemara says, chad b'sayif. Doesn't make sense. Can it really be that if you kill somebody, you get decapitation, and if you kill your father, you get, which is more severe than killing a regular person, you're only going to get strangulation, which is not as severe as decapitation. Gemara says, well, this is a dispute. This only makes sense according to the Rabbanan. Say strangulation is more lenient than decapitation. According to Rabbi Shimon, who says strangulation is more severe, Michael and Maimar, what would you say? So therefore, the Gemara is a different source. It says one who strikes the man will be put to death. And then it also states, and it says also that if a person will strike somebody with enmity and he will die, then the person will be put to death. From the fact that he has to emphasize there that the striking puts him to death, we say that anytime it says hakah without mentioning it, lav misahu, and then it's not going to be death, and therefore just striking him, and still it's enough to sentence you to death. So in one verse it says if you strike a man, and the other verse it says whoever strikes anyone is put to death. So why does it need to say both? Because the ikas of Rahmana Maka Ish Umeis, if the Torah said one who strikes a man and he dies, have Amina Ish to Bar Mitzvah in Katan Lo, I would say a man, the reason why you put to death is because he's a Bar Mitzvah. So therefore you put to death. But therefore, Kata Rahmana Kol Maka Nefesh. Because Rahmana Kol Maka Nefesh, if he just says Kol Maka Nefesh, Having a mina feel nefama, I would have said even a nefil, a baby who's born is not viable, or a feel ben shmona, another baby's 8 months pregnant, again not viable. So tzricha, therefore it says ish. The person has to be viable. I might think that you're liable even though you didn't make a wound on your father. You're only liable once you make a wound. No, so the pasuk says one who strikes a human or an animal. Just like an animal, just like an animal, you're only liable once you do a wound. So, so the Gemara says, I might be thinking that you're liable even though you didn't make a chabura. So why does it say that you're only liable once if you do the wound on your father or mother? So the pasuk says we compare it to an animal. Just like an animal, you're only liable if you make a wound. Also, by a person, you're only liable if you make the wound. So let's say you basically cause the animal to be weakened with stones, meaning say you damage the animal and you weaken its strength without making an actual wound. I might think also you're exempt. That's not logical. So the Gemara says, Ella. So the Gemara says that the source for the idea that if you strike your father, it's only if you make a wound, it's not by comparing it to an animal. So it's from the word nefesh. It says makeh, maya nefesh. It says makeh nefesh behema. But it's really the word nefesh is not relevant to an animal because because even if you struck it with stones, you'd be liable. So therefore, Taneo Inyan nefesh adam. So apply it to a human and say that you're only liable if you make the wound. So if that's the case, Ela Keshalam, so why did the Torah say compare a human to an animal? Look at the Tana de Bechizkiah. So it's like the Tana de Bechizkiah taught. This is the Gemara we had earlier. What is Tana de Bechizkiah? So Rashi says this comes from Baba Kama in Hamayniach that just like it's to tell us, even though there's a principle of Kimle B'Deramine, that if you get the more severe penalty, you don't get the lesser penalty. But let's say you're not actually getting the more severe penalty because of a technicality. You did it by accident. So the Tan Mechizkiah says you're still going to be exempt from the lesser penalty of payment. And we learned this all also from an animal that there we don't distinguish between accidental and intentional, and you always have to pay if you did a tort. So too also by killing a human being that you never have to pay because you're liable for death if you did it intentionally. So Gemara says, well, and so that's why we compare a human to an animal. Well, Gemara says, Hani Choman Islay Tanan Bechizkiah, but not everybody agrees with Tanan Bechizkiah. Choman the Islay Tanan Bechizkiah. Okay, Shalom, according to one who does not agree with Tanan Bechizkiah, why are we comparing the humans to an animal? So it's to tell us, Ma Maka Behema. It's to tell us just like a Makav Behema that just like if you strike an animal with refuah, but you're doing it, you make the wound in order to heal the animal potter, you're exempt from a tort. So also if you strike your father in order to heal him, let's say you're his dentist, then you're going to be exempt and you're allowed to do this. But there's a caveat. The Bailu, because there was a question, Ben Maushi Yakis Dama Aviv. Ramasna says you can. What about can you let the blood of your father? So about this, Ramasna says that it is allowed because the rubric, the framework of all the prohibitions between somebody and their friend is based upon the verse that you should do to your friend what you want, and you shouldn't do what you wouldn't want. But bloodletting is a benefit, and so therefore you're allowed to do it. So Rav Dimi says, Rav Dimi Barchina Amar Makeh Adam Makeh Be'ema Ma Ba'aka Be'ema Refuah Pater Af Makeh Adam Refuah Pater. No, it's going to be exempt because we say we compare a human to an animal, just like by an animal it's for exemption, so too by a human he'll be exempt if it's for the purpose of healing. Rav was shavak lebrei lemishko silva. Rav did not allow his son to take out a thorn from him. Rav Ravina did not allow his son to open up his wound to let the pus out. Why? Because there was the concern, because maybe he'll wound him and there'll be an accidental prohibition. So if that's the case, if that's the case, nobody should ever be able to do it. Nobody ever should be able to take out a thorn or open up a wound. So the Gemara says, no, achar shigas lav. No, shigas chanak. No, if somebody else makes it, it's just a prohibition, meaning to say that if you weren't intending to do it, it's an accidental prohibition. And then if you did intentionally, it would just be a regular prohibition. But if a son, if he had done it intentionally, it would be strangulation, so we don't allow it. The Gemara says, what about the fact? The Gemara asks the question from basically the laws of Shabbos about whether or not you're allowed to, that needle is allowed, about the laws of a needle on Shabbos, because it says, Mechat Shal Yad, Lito Bo Asakotz, that you're allowed, that a Mechat Shal Yad is not muktzah, you're allowed to move it to take out a thorn. And so we say, well, why? Why are we concerned that you're going to make a wound on Shabbos? And and there it's a prohibition of skila. So the Gemara says, no, there it's not a concern, because there also mekalkahu. There it's ruining it. And anything, and mekalkel, if you're ruining something, you're exempt on Shabbos, because Shabbos requires malachas machshavas. Shabbos requires like intent to do it. Malachas machshavas ktiv. And so therefore, and we're not going to be liable for mekalkel, only Rabbi Shimon. And also, even Rabbi Shimon by Chabura, he doesn't make you liable for mekalkel unless it was your intent, because you needed the wound. But somebody who's removing the thorn, he doesn't need the wound, so he'd rather not make a wound, so you're going to be exempt. More says, that's Rabbanon Mandamar Chayiv Mekel Meimer. Now, of course, Rabbi Shimon says mekalkel is liable. What would he say? So the Gemara says, Man Shamas Leidamar Mekalkel B'Chabura Chayiv. That's Rabbi Shimon. Only Rabbi Shimon says mekalkel by a wound is liable, but Rabbi Shimon Omar Kol Malacha She'eina Tzricha Gufa Pater. Rabbi Shimon says any malacha that you're not doing it for its own purpose and you'd rather not make the wound, you're going to be exempt. And so therefore, since this is not a malacha, it's machshavas, because you don't want to make the wound, you'd rather not make the wound. Rabbi Shimon would say you're exempt in this case. Okay, we'll stop here, and we have the davening at 7:15 today. A big shkoyach to everyone.